So let me tell you a story about my worst parenting role possible, which is me trying to be the tooth fairy. So I have twin 6-year-old girls. You're going to see them in about 15 of the slides in the next 20 minutes. And one of them lost their front tooth about a couple days ago. And so my wife and I are like really big about this very imaginative period of their lives. And so we try to create like pink pixie dust from the doorway to their pillow. And we always put under their pillow some really exotic currency, like an emerald or a silver dollar. And the other day, I put down this really rare $2 US bill underneath Raven's pillow. And so she was super excited. I wasn't even sure quite myself if it was real or not, because you never see a $2 bill. And later that afternoon, the ice cream truck passes by. And she runs outside and realizes she can't find any of her money. And so she runs out with a $2 bill. And I stop her, and I'm like, no, you can't use the $2 bill. And she's like, well, why not? I'm like, because it's rare, it's exotic. You don't see a $2 bill everywhere. It's like, well, what's the point of having it if you can't use it? I'm like, is it going to make money if I hold on to it? I'm like, no. I'm like, well, why would the tooth fairy be so mean that they give me money that I can't even use? All I want is to have a fudgesicle. And so I don't have any good answers. This is a completely failed experiment for being the tooth fairy. And I thought to myself, what if there was a raven on school boards and on the board of directors for businesses and in governments that took a step back away from all the assumptions that we have and asked those questions that make, like myself as a tooth fairy, realize that we're idiots because we're not thinking from children's perspectives. So a school board, when you do research and you ask teachers, well, what's the number one thing that's preventing you from doing what you want to do? They talk about inattentive, distracted, hyperactive children. Now, on one end, a different talk is about over-medicating children for ADHD. That's not this talk. But the other one is when there are budget cuts and when there's an attempt to raise grades at school, the first thing they do is get rid of recess. And so little Raven, being on the school board, would say, that doesn't make any sense. You're saying the biggest problem is they have a hard time sitting still and you're taking away the 130-minute period where they get to run and have unfettered play. And to me, it's if we can harness that childlike curiosity in the adult world, that we can have saner organizations and we can see the folly in a lot of decisions that we make. And so I want to talk about for 20 minutes about this underappreciated orphan one-legged stepchild in the world of happiness and well-being that I call curiosity. And so I want to bust a few myths. Now, a lot of the talks today, just as everywhere where I go when people are talking about happiness and well-being, is the notion of we're going to go to positivity, feeling good, whether it's contentment, whether it's peace of mind, or it's excitement or exhilaration. This is where the action is. I'm going to show that that's not always the case. And the other one, probably more important, is the notion of as soon as we get rid of our self-doubts, as soon as we get rid of that inner critic inside of our head that questions, what am I doing in front of this stage? Why am I the so-called expert and none of you guys? Why shouldn't we be switching roles right now? Why do I feel like such a fraud? Once I get rid of that, then I'll write the book I always wanted. Then I'll go for the promotion. Then, once I get rid of all of my baggage of all those bad relationships in my life, now I'm finally ready to settle down at 85 years old for a romantic relationship. So I have this mantra, which is you can't always be happy. You can't just turn a button and turn on happiness. But you could almost always be in this mindset of being aware and curious. It's this powerful resource that we don't take advantage of. And one of the reasons why is because we think it's so obvious. So if I requested 4 of those cute little kids to be behind me. Clearly, I'm not at the stage where I get to get all my requests made. And if one of them was wearing a shirt that said, I love Tchaikovsky, that cute little boy with the sweaty palms, I don't need to tell you to be curious. You're going to be, how often is that kid bullied? What kind of parent teaches their kid at 6 years old where all of a sudden they're focusing on Tchaikovsky is the music they're being exposed to? You don't have to be intrigued. You're going to be intrigued automatically. We think that that's what curiosity is. Something bizarre and weird gets into our field of vision and automatically get curious. We don't think about that we can wield this like a laser at any given point in time. So this is one of my twins, Chloe. Now, I don't know if in Australia you guys have these kind of sadomasochistic rides for children in festivals. Okay. So this sadomasochistic ride here, you have to be 5 years old to go on this ride. They're 3, but I'm a psychologist. I have twins, so of course I pay people for my kids to do weird things so I could see how each one of them responds. So what you're not seeing is off to the side of the screen is a greasy old man who I give $20. I'm like, listen, can you sneak my kid on that ride over there? And I put her over the fence to go on this thing. Now you can see, this has all of the qualities of the situation of what you're supposed to be curious about. It's uncertain, it's mysterious, it's complicated, it's challenging, it's weird. And you can see from Chloe's facial expression, she's not curious in the slightest right now. The next picture, which I'm not going to show you, is her crying hysterically. Of note, I took them to the fair myself, but they're not screaming for Dad. They didn't scream for Dad's name for weeks later. Chloe screams for Mom, she's not there, and it's a horror show. Raven goes in the exact same ride. And for her, this is the most intriguing, curious experience ever. All of a sudden, you can get rid of gravity and you can essentially fly. This is amazing. Same situation, one child is confused and fearful, the other child is curious. Clearly, the Oxford English Dictionary has it wrong that curiosity is about recognizing and appreciating mystery, uncertainty, and complexity. Clearly, there's some other piece to the puzzle. And that other piece to the puzzle is one of the secrets to inducing or enhancing curiosity, not just in ourselves, but in children, in people that we manage, any situation. There are 2 questions that we ask ourselves on the fringes of conscious awareness when we enter in a bizarre, uncertain, or challenging situation. You're not always consciously aware of this. And so if you're with Chloe and Raven, you're in the sadomasochistic ride, you're going to ask yourself, is this novel? Is this challenging? If yes, you might be curious, but only if you answer yes to the next question. Do I think I could handle or cope with this novelty? If you don't answer yes to both, you don't get curiosity. If you recognize the novelty but don't believe you can handle it, you're talking about confusion or fear. If you recognize you can handle it, but you don't recognize the novelty, that's just being engaged. That's just concentrating on something. So you need both. And often, it's not about finding novelty in the world around you. It's often about people feeling as if they have the ability to cope with change. And with children, which is the focus of this conference, it's often about having them moments buried in their memory about when they were successful when they didn't think they were. Now we're going back to Carol's talk about this growth mindset. When they put the effort in and they were successful, not just reminding them of those times, but fleshing and soaking that experience for 10, 15 seconds so it seeps into their brain, it seeps into the neurochemistry so that it's easier to recall. It's very easy for us to call failures and times we didn't perform well. It's very difficult to recall times when we're stressed, of times we were successful and efficacious. So with these building blocks of curiosity, we discover that there's some things, what we often think is exactly what we need for a fulfilling life is exactly the opposite of what we need. The pleasures of uncertainty. Let's talk about organ donors. So imagine you need a liver transplant to be alive. And you're asked, do you want to meet the person that donated an organ? Now, invariably, when you ask people in these studies, they say yes. This is going to be amazing. We're going to have this news conference, and then there's going to be the unveiling. The guy who basically saved me is going to come out. I'm going to be like, a part of you is inside me. Like, we're like one. We're going to be friends forever. You're going to come for Thanksgiving dinners. Your family is my family. And then you follow them like a couple days later, a couple weeks later. It becomes one more person that's on their contact list on their iPhone. A month later, well, I've got so many friends I don't keep up with. I'm sorry I didn't call you this week. And you still have this great appreciation, but it wasn't nearly as profoundly life-changing as you thought it was going to be. If you never met the person that gave you the organ donation. So for those people, it's a very different experience. They wake up from the surgery, and they're like, what the hell kind of benevolent, compassionate world do I live in that someone's going to go under the knife, take out an organ, put it in me, and they don't even care if I know who they are?
They're not even interested. Like, how do I adapt to that? What do I make sense of that? I must become a kinder person to make up for this experience. They find that those people change. They become more grateful. They become more compassionate. They become kinder. But the trick of this is people think it's about certainty, knowing who that person is who saved us. And how do we get to the pleasures of uncertainty? Knowledge gives us this. And so if you have a bunch of kids playing with a jigsaw puzzle of the 50 states in America, and one kid could only basically complete 3 of the 50 states, and you ask them if they're interested in finding out the other 47, what do you think they're going to respond? They're going to say, like, no, this is a waste of time. I don't know any of this stuff. It's not interesting. Now, but when a child knows 47 of those states, and you're holding back the other 3, and you ask them, well, what are you going to do with the other 3? You'll find that kids will say, I don't know, like, I'll clean your toilet, I'll wash your car. Like, I just need to know. I can't go home not knowing the 3 states that are left to finish this jigsaw puzzle. As we gain knowledge, we have more intrigue and curiosity about what we don't know. Tom talked about this as we opened up the conference today. Have any of you seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life with George Bailey? In that movie, George Bailey is put through the most profound intervention to enhance your sense of gratitude in life. But we don't have time to talk about it because I only have 20 minutes. So let's talk about how to induce curiosity in people. Steve Jobs is the mastermind of taking the science of curiosity and getting people to be completely stoked about what Apple was doing. So in 1999, when he came back as a CEO for the second time, he put out this ad campaign, Think Differently. Some of you might remember this. Now here's what was genius. This is a 3-point approach to inducing curiosity. He made us ask the question, what does your computer say about the type of person you are? This is not a question people were asking about in 1999. Does it say that you're intelligent, that you're creative, that you're playful? Step 1 to evoking curiosity. Create a gap between what people know and what they think they want to know. Now, where Steve Jobs' brilliance was, he made you think of a question before you even thought you had the question. What does your computer say about you? What's your relationship with your computer? It's not just an object. Step 2 for inducing curiosity. Provide a tiny bit of information. So in this ad, he showed a few pictures. So these 2 might look familiar. You've got Picasso, you've got Bob Dylan. Then you had ones that you kind of knew, but you sort of might have guessed at, Amelia Earhart. And then it got a little bit more interesting. Who's this composer? Who's this opera singer? Clearly, they must be a creative genius because that's sort of the theme for this ad campaign. Who's this amazing dance choreographer? So here's the third part, why Steve Jobs is better than every automobile company in the world. Is that Steve Jobs left out the names of all these creative geniuses. And so people were out there saying, who is that woman, like in the lower left-hand corner of the screen? Maria Callas, right, this great Greek opera singer. And as people were discovering these creative geniuses they never heard about, the whole time it's being connected with Apple. Like creative geniuses and Apple. And here's the other brilliant part of this. He never, ever in any ad campaign, billboard, print, or television, or radio, ever says anything about any of the products that Apple's releasing. So he gave you the gift of, here's a question, what's your computer say about you? And a scavenger hunt. Discover who these creative geniuses are, and what the hell's Apple doing anyway? What do they have to do with these creative geniuses? Car commercials, as a contrast, in Arial 7 font, gives you every single detail about financing, things about the car you don't even know about, the carburetor in terms of what year it was created. It's all in there if you were to pause your screen. If you think about how schools operate, it's not about opening a gap with a question and having kids try to discover on a scavenger hunt not the answer, but a perspective on things. That's not how schools operate. Schools are about memorizing facts, as if we don't have reference books or Google at our disposal. What if instead of teaching kids the years of World War II, we asked them, well, what would it be like for a 19-year-old pregnant woman in Japan at the time? What would it be like for someone who was 35 years old in the military in the United States, who lived in the South? There's no right or wrong answer. It's about from different vantage points, the war looks a little bit differently. And which do you think they're going to remember more? The factoids about World War II of who are the allies, or from the perspectives of different lenses that people were talking about? Opening gaps instead of closing them, and giving people an opportunity to explore it for themselves. Another part of curiosity that fits nicely with what Carol was talking about is that what do we fail to notice in our daily routine? So think about hotel maids. So for those of you that are here from other countries and you're staying in a hotel, the amount of work that they do, it's exercise involved. Picking up large, heavy, wet towels, making sure not to touch it because you're not sure what bodily fluids are on there, putting it into a hamper, vacuuming the floors, pushing that nasty, huge cart up and down the hallway. So half of these maids were given information, a packet, talking about the Surgeon General's recommendations for exercise. The other half was told, you are already exceeding what the Surgeon General is recommending for a healthy person's exercise based on what you already do as a hotel maid. And they went a step further in this packet. It gave them a concrete example. If you were a 140-pound woman and you're vacuuming for 20 minutes, you would lose 40 calories. You are already exercising right now. And they followed them for 4 weeks, these two groups of maids. Now, they were both giving information about exercise. None of them had time to join a gym. None of them changed their diet over the 1 month. Those maids that were told what you're already doing is sufficient exercise to be a very healthy adult, they lost 2 pounds on average over the 4 weeks. Their systolic blood pressure dropped by 10 points, 3% drop in body fat. No difference in exercise between the two groups or amount of diet. It was a mindset change that led to that difference. Exploring is, what exactly does it mean to be working in a hotel? How is my body actually operating? So a lot of what I'm talking about with hotel maids, talking about searching for, exploring for answers for questions you haven't thought about, intentionally trying to create gaps in other people's information of what they want to know and what they think they already know. Having people turn curiosity inward to understand themselves as an intervention. One thing we want to do with curiosity is know that it's an anxious, tension-ridden exploration. So if we're going to ask children to go on this route of exploring new terrain and growing to be new people, we need to be a secure base for them. They need to know that they can come back, a boy can cry, a child can fall apart. They can tell you they feel vulnerable. They can tell you, I think I failed, and you're not going to judge them. You're going to be open and receptive to whatever thoughts and feelings they have, a secure base. And when they come back from their journeys, they're Homer-like odysseys. They're going to be changed people. When they go to summer camp, children do, and they come back 3 months later, and they have their first kiss, and they met their first person of a different sexual orientation or race, and they have a different perspective on life. And you did not, as a parent or a teacher, put that thought inside them. Can you accept this new, revamped 2.0 version of the child that you're meeting to be a safe haven for them? If your favorite band changes the way they do music for their next album and it sounds nothing like the one that you loved, do you abandon them and start requesting, can you please play songs from the last album that I love? Why must you evolve? Or will you accept the fact that your favorite band, just like you, gets bored of playing the same songs over and over again? So what I ask of you as my time's run out is to leave here with the single intention of evoking curiosity in yourself or somebody else, intentionally creating gaps, intentionally looking for discomfort, intentionally looking for what of the seemingly familiar is actually unfamiliar when you come home from work. Because every single day when you come home and hug your romantic partner or your children, you can't predict what it's going to feel like, the amount of pressure of arms around you, of your rib cage against theirs, of their head resting against your shoulder. It's a different experience every time. Instead of trying to categorize and label things and box things, appreciate the subtle novelty. Because that's what maintains passion in long-term relationships. That's what keeps people to have vitality when they're interacting with their children, even though every single day seems, on the surface, the same. So this is a picture of the Kashdan clan. I've got all three of them here. And what I leave you is with this. Instead of pursuing a life that's about happiness, and as the Dalai Lama was talking about, a state of contentment, I leave you with this potential possibility of an alternative perspective on life. To live a life where you're aware, with an attitude of openness and curiosity, and you're doing what matters most to you. Thank you.